Welcome, everyone. I am so excited for today's special guest. I have Fifi with me. She is a tarot reader, energy worker, and techno witch. And I'm so excited to have her with us today. Fifi, welcome.
Hi, Lori. Thank you.
Fifi, I'd love to start off by I'd love to hear your journey. I'd love to hear your journey with tarot and just how that kind of transpired. What brought you to tarot? Just give us a little backstory of how you got here.
Yeah, so it's kind of fun, like thinking back, my my mom, I'm like thinking back, I can kind of attribute it to two magical women in my life. Number one, my mom. She when I was younger, was a massage therapist, and she did Reiki, and so she was always, in this energy space doing that work, and she still does some of that work, and now she's a photographer as well. But she had this deck of angel cards, so it was kind of like a bunch of different angels, this like shiny metallic deck that, like, as an elementary school kid, I was like, this is so cool. Like like have these memories of like going into like her nightstand drawer and like looking for the deck so I could go and play with it. And I think eventually I kind of just like made it my own. But yeah, so like literally ever since elementary school, I've been playing with cards.
Mhm.
And as a kid, I thought I was just kind of like telling stories, but I didn't really realize that even at that moment I was just like channeling messages, and I would do it for my friends. And then time passed, and when I graduated high school, I was at my Aunt Patty's house. We would kind of have these girls' nights every so often. And it was this transformative time in my life. And so my Aunt Patty asked if she could give me a tarot reading. And I had never heard of the tarot before. I knew cards, but the that tarot was new to me. And so I was super excited. I told her, yes, like I want a reading. And she pulled out this deck called the Mother Piece deck. And this is still the deck that I use today. It's this round deck right here. And so she gave me my first reading, and she could tell how like entranced I was by it. And so we had our sleepover, and the next day she was like, okay, I want you to have this deck, take it with you. Eventually I'll buy you your own, but I don't want you leaving here without this, pretty much. So she really got me started into tarot. And so I love this deck because it comes with a pretty thick book that really breaks down a lot of the archetypes, the cards, the meanings, all of that. And so it's been like over 8 years now that I've been working with the same deck, getting to know it, doing tarot. But only within the past 2 years, since I moved from Minnesota to the deserts of Tucson, that I've been like, I don't want to say like professionally, but I've been doing readings for other people and making some money. So
Yeah.
that's been awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then kind of when I think about it too, it's like I see tarot like, I feel like people who are attracted to tarot are storytellers. I've
Mhm.
always been a storyteller, like, and so tarot is just such a cool way to channel and tell stories. And yeah.
That's amazing. I love that you were gifted a deck from a family member and it's been kind of passed down from like this lineage of women in your family. That's really beautiful. When you went from kind of like playing around and practicing to like, what was that first reading like where you were like doing the exchange? Because I think a lot of people, they really sit in that place of like uncertainty of like, I don't know, can I
Yeah.
charge for this? Should I charge for this? Can I do this professionally? When people are first getting started in anything really, whether it's art
Mm-hmm.
or tarot or whatever they're doing, there's always that kind of like transition point. What was that like for you?
Super nerve-wracking. Like I was so nervous. And I, even I would just read for friends. Like it kind of felt like at some point the energy just kind of like kept building and building to a point where I was like, okay, I know I'm good at this, but also like my friends like expect, like more expectation kind of came with that because it was like, oh, every time I give them a reading, I'm like right on. And so
Mhm.
I was doing a lot of this in college with my friends. We just pull cards and read them. Um, and I remember kind of, being nervous with that, but then overcoming it. And then, yeah, once I kind of added the element of like, okay, like I'm going to read for a person that I don't know, because from that point, it was people that I knew I had some type of interactions with before then. And so I was really nervous. Like that kind of like doubt creeps in, like, well, am I just good at reading because I know these people? And like,
Yeah.
that's what, like, um, but let's see, I remember doing readings at a gallery show, one of my friend's gallery shows here in Tucson. And that was really the first time that I like set up, charged for readings, had multiple people coming to me that I didn't know. And I remember the first one, I was really happy that the first one, the woman who came to me, like her energy was just so like so calm and kind and open that it really made me comfortable. And I think that was like the universe, like, okay, here's your first, here's your first
Yeah.
one. It's gonna be
Baby
cool.
steps. Yeah.
Baby steps, yep. And it's kind of funny because now I tell myself like, okay, I did it. I was successful if I can make the person cry, which is kind of like weird, but like I'm telling you, like usually when I do this work, I get some tears, and so that first woman, the tears came, and I was like, oh my, it's that energy. Like I just felt it. Like okay, like I really tapped into something here, and like we're really moving this energy and transforming and doing the work. And so yeah, and so kind of since then it's been that pattern. I've gotten some sticklers, I've gotten some energies that like it takes a minute to kind of just like break open and get into it.
Mhm.
But now, I still get a little butterflies like before I do every reading.
Mhm.
But I'm definitely more grounded in the fact that like I trust my intuition. I trust what's going to come out of my mouth. Because
Yeah.
in the beginning there'd be things I would hold back, and later in the reading it would come out, and I'm like, well, I wish I would have just said it, because then it would have sounded so much cooler than like it coming out now where it's like, oh, I've gotten a little more information. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So how did you really kind of build your confidence when it came to doing tarot?
literally just doing it, like hopping into it, like jumping into the fire. That's kind of been my theme of life too, is that like I'm a risk taker. So at some point I get to the cliff and I'm like, all right, let's jump. Um and and I'm a manifesting generator, so these opportunities kind of come to me, and it was like, okay, well, I don't want to turn it down, so I guess I'm doing it, and I kind of
Yeah.
just receive it, accept it, and jump into it. But honestly, it's literally just doing it over and over again, practicing, because I remember that first time doing those readings, and it was also the first time that I had done readings back to back to back. And I could just tell every person that I kept doing readings for, I just kept getting better and better and more intuitive, being able to pick up on more and more. Um, and so yeah, it's really just proving to myself, like, and that's kind of what I have to do before every reading, is just be like, okay, Fee, like you've done this before, you're gonna do it again, like you got this. Like it's
Yeah.
kind of like that data bank of like, yes, like you got the data to back it up, like you're good.
Yeah. What I'm hearing, it's like
Mhm.
you're building your trust muscle over time.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
doing your
definitely.
reps and and doing your,
Hmm.
multiple readings will definitely help increase that and enhance that. And it sounds like that's what it's really done for you. Um,
Yeah. And I'm also lucky that, well, maybe the word's not lucky, but I've been working with the same deck for like 8 years.
mm,
So, for the first couple years, I was really just reading myself and really got to know the language of my deck and how I communicate with it. And so that's kind of another thing that's really added to the trust. I feel like is just building that relationship with my deck too. And
mhm.
like, yeah, having that energy, that trust in her too. Like, I trust you and she trusts me. And yeah.
That's amazing. Um, when you think about tarot and how you how would you how would you say you use it in your everyday life, or do you use it in your everyday life? Like how does tarot play a role in your life? I guess is more the question I want to ask.
Yeah. It's actually a pretty big part of my life. I'm not pulling a card daily, like I'm pulling a card every other day.
Mhm.
I like to, especially if like I just feel like my energy's off, I'll pull a card because it'll just be like it'll just give me this little direction and validation and help me just get through the day or whatever it is. But yeah, like I really do. I really like lean on the tarot. I lean on these images and these messages that kind of spark, intuition and guidance in my life.
Mhm.
Um, yeah.
Beautiful. And for anybody who's not familiar with tarot, how would you describe tarot personally?
So tarot it's a way to first communicate with yourself and then in a greater level communicate with source or this oneness, this consciousness that we kind of all that we're all a part of. um yeah, it's a divination tool, right? Like there's so many different kinds of divination tools out here. There's so much magic, and this one I feel like this one is, people who are drawn to tarot are going to be they're going to be seers. They're going to be ones that have daydreams and visions and premonitions, and they're storytellers. And so it kind of all tarot wraps all of that up into one. um yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Would you say that tarot found
Yeah,
you or you found tarot or both?
I think it found me. I really do. I think I always drawn to, playing with the decks, but like I had no idea what it was until my aunt brought it out. And it's just
Yeah.
like, whoa. And it's so just like it's such a good way to communicate with your subconscious, with just like all that information that's just being stored, but it's not like in front of you. And so it brings this energy out of you that like makes you feel powerful too and so
Mhm.
connected.
Mhm. That's amazing. What would you say for anybody who's just kind of getting started? What's the difference between like a tarot deck, an oracle deck, or just like sometimes there's like cards of inspiration, right? Like how
Totally.
what's the difference between them? And then how would they go about like picking a deck?
Yeah. Um, okay, so the difference between tarot and our oracle or energy decks, tarot is tarot is based on an ancient system. And I'll kind of get into this later about like the history and things of tarot, but tarot is going to be more complex. Tarot and there is a system to it, where with oracle, not saying that there isn't a system, but oracle is more like general energies for each card.
Mhm.
Tarot, the entire deck tells a story. The entire deck is the story of the human journey to consciousness and then higher self. You know, it's the journey. And so tarot's gonna be able to give you a lot more in-depth insight into your future, into, you know, all the possibilities, all the paths that you can take. Where I have a couple oracle decks that I love. I love oracle decks because you can find one that's like perfect for you. Like there's so many energies that people are creating and playing with, and so that's awesome. And I kind of like to supplement my tarot. Like I'll pull some tarot cards and then I'll pull an oracle card to kind of just like seal the deal.
Yeah.
But yes, tarot is going to be a lot more in-depth, more complex system, and it's going to be somewhat of more of a universal system where all tarot readers, though we read differently and we can interpret the cards differently, there is still a foundation there.
Beautiful. Can you talk a little bit more about like what was that transition point from when you were like what made you decide to go from like, oh, I'm just reading for friends to like, oh no, I'm gonna do this, like this is what I'm gonna do, this is what I'm doing?
Right. Okay, well, it's kind of interesting. So during the pandemic, when COVID like first started and we were all in lockdown, I ended up getting my own studio apartment and living by myself, and I knew I was an artist, and so I was like, oh, I want to make art. And it's just like tarot was just like a part of me. Like I was just like always doing tarot, and it was really funny because it was the first time I ever lived by myself, and like I just got super witchy. Like it just like all the witchiness, all the magic, like really just like started coming out once I finally had a space of my own. And when I combined this art project with my tarot reading. So I like pulled a bunch of cards, like channeled these readings, and then I created these art pieces based on that. And so, you know, on a whim, I was like, okay, like people are going to be attracted to the piece that has a message for them. And so that was kind of my first stepping stone, even though it wasn't, you know, I'm sitting down doing readings. This was my first stepping stone into just giving people readings. And so you know, the first couple friends and people who bought my prints and got the reading with it were just like, this is insane. Like this is right on. And I just got so much confirmation. I mean, I don't think there's one person that told me that it wasn't right on, you know, that it didn't resonate. So that was kind of like this bridge that I made, you know. Yeah. And then after that, it was kind of like, oh, okay, well, you know, these readings are right on. Like I channeled these. Now I kind of, it was like a conscious, like, I want to push myself into this realm more. I realized like, oh my gosh, like this is what I love to do. Why don't I just like do it then, you know? And the environment that I was in before I moved to Tucson really wasn't conducive to that. But once I got to Tucson and I was at all these markets and I was around more magical people and just all of this stuff, it was just like it all kind of came together. And yeah, and then I was like, and it was that push. I was like, okay, Fee, like let's do this. Like we're gonna jump into it and yeah, just start doing these readings. But it really, Gateway really kind of was like this art project that I did.
I love that. And actually I remember that's when I kind of met you around that time when you were doing the market. And I remember seeing these, I thought it was the coolest thing because you had these beautiful like art pieces together and then you could like scan it and get your reading. And like, I thought it was such a cool way to blend like technology with tarot, with art, and like combine these worlds, right? Like, so I remember very clearly that time. And I was just very drawn to you right away immediately too, which I can always tell, like, I always know who's who's
Mm.
what, when I'm just
Yup,
them.
yup.
And I actually personally got a reading from you too, which was incredible. And I really loved, because I personally don't do a lot of tarot. I don't really
Mhm.
actually even know much about tarot, which is why I'm so excited to have you here today. I feel like there's so many different ways we can heal and so many different ways we can grow and different tools we can use. And I thought, who better to bring in than than Fifi, who is incredible at tarot. So
Yes.
and I'm so excited because for those of you who are listening or watching, you're going to actually get a little course today on tarot.
Mm.
And so I'm really excited to kind of break that down, so anybody who's thinking about getting started in tarot can kind of have some basics to know, where do I even begin with this, right? One of the things you said a little bit earlier that I'm really curious, you talked about the language of the cards. Can you talk about that a little bit more? You talked about, like, your particular deck has a certain language and like
Mm.
a relationship that you've developed. And maybe we'll talk more about that in the actual like course portion, but
Yeah.
I was just curious if you can expand on that a little bit more.
Yeah. Okay. Love that you asked that. So nowadays you will be able to find like a tarot deck, all these different types of decks, right? So like there's the OG deck. That's like the, let's see. Oh my gosh, I'm not gonna butcher it. The
Writer,
writer,
Waiter, or something.
yep,
Yeah.
yep, yep,
Hmm.
deck. And
I think I actually
it's,
have that one. That's funny.
yeah, I'm like, I know I have it like next to me, and I'm just like, yep. But this is even a newer version of that. But anyways, so so that that deck is gonna be pretty much like based on the first tarot deck, the first suits, the first all of that. So what I love about my deck is that it's actually taken some of the suits. So for example, like the king and the queen. In my deck, it's the shaman and the priestess.
Mm.
It's I like that it changed the language to make it so it's, shamans and priestesses are on the same level, right? But they
Mhm.
do different things. And so it's definitely more inclusive.
Mhm.
And that's really a lot what I look for when I'm looking for tarot. I really don't buy any other tarot decks, but when I'm looking for oracle decks and things like that, I'm always looking for inclusivity, diversity
Mhm.
within the deck. And so yeah, so it's cool because like you don't have to just go with the traditional deck. You can like branch out and find a deck that really speaks to you and find the suits that speak to you, because there's um like in my deck, usually it'll be the pentacle, which kind of represents earth energy, but it's the discs, and so it kind of takes that like capitalistic vibe of the
Yeah.
pentacle and kind of brings it more into the
Mhm.
earthiness of it. So it's definitely, my deck is very feminist, and it's that's the language of it, right? Like that's
I
kind of
love
what I'm
that.
talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, is
I love
that,
that though.
yeah,
I
there's
didn't even realize, I never thought about that as far as like, some of those societal, capitalistic, patriarchal elements being added in just the original decks. Like I didn't even like think um yeah, it was something to even consider. And so I love that you're bringing this up, that you can find decks that are very inclusive and diverse and much more um, welcoming on a collective level than what some of the decks have been. That's great.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, and then so there's other elements to the language too, like just for me personally, like I'm a Cancer, I'm a water sign, like, and so I'm really drawn to that type of element. And so there's specific cards in the deck that speak to me more because they're more rooted in those elements, where other readers might be more rooted in a fire element, or not even be elemental at all and kind of look at it from different realms. And so it's yeah, I love tarot because it's so complex, but it's like, because it's so complex, you can really make it your own.
Yeah, I love that. And actually, I love that you brought that up, because can you speak a little bit about like the different flavors of even readers, and like, I mean, at least in your experience, I know, of course, everybody's different in how they do it, but like, and maybe like what to kind of look for in a reader, or, if you're going to get a reading. I mean, obviously get a reading from Fifi, but but can you just speak to that a little bit? Like, kind of the differences of readers, and like maybe what to look for when you're looking for a reader?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, I mean, number one, like, you're probably drawn to someone for a reason, right? So, kind of following that, but making sure that you're not drawn out of like a fear based thing. Like, you're not like, oh, like, I'm really scared. Like, I need to get a reading. Like, something like that, more of, oh, I'm really curious, I'm kind of lost, I need direction, something like that, being drawn to that reader. So yeah, like there's like the couple readers that I've had a reader that is more of like a medium like you, where she channels your ancestors, she channels this wisdom and uses the cards to, to spark her intuition, to spark that communication and that story that your ancestors are trying to tell you. Love her, the Gently Gypsy. She's on Instagram. And then there's other readers that are really into astrology as well. And so within the tarot deck, there's the major arcana can be linked to astrological signs. And so there's readers that can like that are based off of that. And so if you're really into astrology, like that would be kind of a cool one to,
Cool.
look into, something like that. Um and then I've had readers that, are really just like super, super psychic and will just like pull, two cards, not really like tell you what the cards mean, but just like I had a reader, it was amazing. Like it was before I even knew I was gonna move here, and she said something like, something's gonna happen in January and July for you. And this was a tarot reading, and I'm like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
And lo and behold, like January, I move in with my partner, and then July we decide to move to the desert. So it was just so yeah, there's so many different kinds of readers out there. And so kind of just yeah, like feeling it out however you yeah, like whatever vibe you want. So for me, I know that I'm realizing this the more I do it, is that I attract people who are usually going through a transformation in their life. I'm really good with working with transformative energy, helping you transmute it and getting you like on that path, giving you that validation that like these are the next steps and this is going to feel good and you can do this. So yes, I'm really so like and when I do readings, I see it as energy work. A lot of the times, like the first couple cards that come up are kind of like you're at right now and like the cycles that you've been going through. And so we really kind of work through that, and then we get out of that and we work through, okay, now what is the future gonna be like? How do we pull in that energy? And so I really open up portals for you to like jump into and kind of be that catalyst of this like transformation, this new beginning for you.
I
Yeah.
love that. That's so good. And I mean, I experienced that myself with you, which was just so great and so necessary at that time, especially. So what would you say, I know you touched on it a little bit, like as far as like, you know, making sure you feel like a connection. Like, are there any other tips you would give in working or like choosing your tarot reader, like choosing someone to
Yes.
read for you?
The other thing that comes to mind is the deck. Like, watch them read the cards, and if you are drawn to the deck, like that's such a big part, because it's like we're a channel. Like the reader is just like the vessel, and so the deck is going to play a big role in how we channel. And so if you're drawn to the imagery of the deck, like that'll be a good reader for you. If you're like kind of freaked out by the deck that they're using, it's not gonna like vibe with your energy, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
So
them.
that's definitely or them, because that's their energy, you know,
Yeah.
like that's reflection. So yeah, definitely like in the deck. And then I would just like I feel like a lot of us readers kind of somewhere, you know, on our social media or website kind of have some samples of us like doing readings or pulling cards or doing like showing up and doing that. So I would just like tune into lives. I would, you know, just follow on Instagram for a little bit. I mean, I don't even want to say that because I'm impulsive. I was gonna say I wouldn't impulsively do it, but I would. If you
I do
feel
too.
if you feel it strongly enough, just go for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I know it, I do it too. I'm like, no, I know I want to do
Like,
this.
wait a
Let's do
second.
it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, fantastic. So I would love now if you're willing and ready, I would love to kind of jump into the course portion of this, and we can always finish up with questions at the end.
Yeah.
If you
No, yes, that sounds great. And I was gonna tell you, yeah, if you want to just like, if you have questions while I'm talking, it can totally be kind of like this
Okay.
classroom type thing. Like, just ask me, because it'll be good, like, you know, help me dive deeper into it, and for everybody else.
Totally.
Awesome.
Okay, awesome.